All right, this week I'm going to talk about a link to on a topic of nutrition. So, a link I'm going to provide is like nutrition.gov. It brings you to like a link directly to like the USDA site. So this one is another decent source because, like I said before, it's a .gov website. So like what you do is when you go into it and click the link and everything, it actually brings up a whole website. And the first thing that shows up is in a sense an introductory YouTube video on nutrition, and explains like how the website goes, and it gets into the information that like the USDA provides and everything. So nutrition is probably one of the easiest things to fuck up and one of the hardest things to get right and everything when it comes to the whole seven pillars that I'm talking about. Because training, you can just pretty much get your ass to the gym and jump on the treadmill, or you can get a yoga mat and sit here in the living room and do a yoga session and pull up your phone. So that's relatively easier, in a sense, when it comes to training and mobility and stuff. Sleep is relatively easier to get started because you can get yourself on a set schedule and everything, like going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time and everything. So you can get you can eat a lot easier, get a decent sleep schedule and everything. But when it comes to nutrition, it's so easy to mess up and everything because there's so much information out there. And if you look at the spectrum of how you eat, when you eat completely plant-based with vegan, or completely animal-based with carnivore, and there's so many different ways to eat in between, like pescatarian, vegetarian, there's of course, like I said, vegan, and then carnivore. There's also paleo, and there also keto and everything. So it's very, like I said, and I'll keep reiterating, it's very easy to screw this up because there's so many different approaches to how to eat. And also another thing that has become big in probably the last 10-15 years or so is intermittent fasting, where you only eat in a certain window of time, whether it's you only eat in 8 hours, whether it's from noon to 8 p.m., or even another popular one is called the warrior diet, where you're only eating within a 4-hour window and everything. So, and of course there's also the bodybuilding approach, where you're pretty much eating every couple hours and everything. So there's so many different approaches, and so this is why it's so easy to mess up and everything, because you got to look at your unique situation. I'm always big on saying, and because you might have a slightly different a gut biome than me and everything. So me being more biased towards animal based approach and everything, because that is what ultimately works for me and everything. You might say, well, hey, look, this works for him, so I'm going to eat exactly like him and everything. You might have a slightly different gut biome. For instance, I know with the how I eat video I did, I've showed that I do consume milk and everything. You might be someone who's lactose intolerant, or maybe you have a sensitivity to lactose, and so and that you might be unaware of, and through just the daily living, you might be masked by other stuff that you eat, as well as the other daily habits. So you might not necessarily like I said, oh, I'm going to eat exactly like him, and you might start consuming milk and milk based products with the yogurt and cheese and stuff like that, and it just messes you up and everything. But as soon as you take it out and you substitute something else in for that, you find oh, wow, that works so much better and everything. So what you got to do is in a sense, as always, you kind of have to take the information, step back, and try and look at things as objectively as possible. And you don't want to be get into a subjective ideological mind space that you can get in the vegans are notorious for this, in that they pretty much make it their religion and everything. And of course it's the same thing with the carnivores. With carnivore, the people who eat the carnivore diet, well, this is how we ate as hunters and gatherers, and this is the way we evolved, and we still haven't evolved past that and everything. There's not enough time. And of course there's the vegans that are pretty much on the exact opposite and everything, oh, well, we gotta go completely plant-based because we gotta save the planet. And again, you gotta have the step back, take out that subjectivity of like the ideological approach and be like, and ask yourself objectively, let me find out if one of these two extremes is perfect for me, or if there's anywhere in between that works for me. Because like overall, we humans are omnivores, so that's why there are so many different approaches that work so great and everything. So like for instance, like someone like me who has more of like a paleo type approach to it, that might work for me. But you have to kind of, in a sense, be your own scientist, your own test subject. In the sense, you have to like research this nutrition for yourself, and you might find that, like for instance, keto might work for you perfectly and everything. And the thing is, though, like the catch of all this is like when you go into this website and like get into this information, is like you got to ask yourself, can I sustain this long term? Over the course of not just maybe weeks or months, but possibly years and decades and over a lifetime and everything. So, and that doesn't mean that you're always going to eat the same way. Like right now, like I might have, like I said, have like a paleo type of approach and everything, but 10 years from now, things might change, and where I might have like a more of like a pescatarian approach, and that might work for me in the future and everything. So like. What's great about this website is that like it's in a sense like a direct link to the USDA. So like with it, like I said before, being a .gov website, you know it's a decent source and everything, so you can have at least a decent foundation. Like and when you dive into this, be like, okay, here's the base information. Let me a base foundation. Let me go off of this and kind of like customize my approach to see like what works best and everything. So like. Now you could kind of like the outdated method of the food pyramid. I'm sure that like people that are old enough will probably still remember that and everything, but like again, like you kind of have to like I said, that's kind of like in a sense like outdated nowadays. And so like what you got to look at, like of course, like getting back into like the macros that I've mentioned, like you kind of have to look at like, okay, well, you could even break it down to like, okay, what are good protein sources for me, what are good fat sources for me, and what are good carb sources for me. So like the great way to start, like when you first get into this website and everything, is like, okay, well, donuts aren't necessarily a good carb source for me, so like what can I do instead? Like, well, fruits and veggies are like a much better alternative for carbs instead of like donuts and ding dongs and like all your junk food and everything. So, and of course, like your protein sources, like you can sit there and like think like, okay, well, where do I cut out the crap and like the lard and unhealthy stuff? Like, okay, well, maybe the McDonald's Big Mac isn't a decent source of protein, so maybe what I'll do is get like ground beef from the grocery store and make up my own burgers. So that could be like another example for like an alternative like of a protein source, like a good versus bad or anything. And getting back into the approach and everything, that might not necessarily work, because if you might find that a vegetarian approach works. So like you might find that eggs are a great protein source for you as well. So like and then of course you got to look into like sources of fat and everything. So like on the animal product side of things, like healthy fats would be stuff kind of like your fatty, your cuts type of meat and everything. Of course, steak, when it comes to beef, I mean, that's a little more expensive and everything. So like if you're trying to save money, what you can do is get like a higher fat percentage of ground beef, go for like the 80 or 85% lean ground beef instead of the 90%. On the plant side of things, you could go for things like avocados. Those are a great source of like fats on the animal plant-based side of things. So like what you kind of have to do like is like I said, take a step back and look at things as objectively as possible. And of course, we also got to take into consideration our biases and everything, because like we might like me being biased towards an animal-based approach and everything. We have to be aware of our own biases. Like you might be more biased towards like a plant-based diet approach, and be like, okay, well, all this the research I've done is pretty much skewed towards this side and everything. So like what I want to do is kind of like try and get like stuff that kind of like that challenges my biases and everything. So like for instance, like the video with the BCAA supplements, like I'm kind of biased against them, but I'm using them now and seeing like trying to challenge this bias and see if they actually can help and everything. So like that's like another thing. Like when it comes to nutrition, we got to be like aware of our biases, and then be able to sit there and like challenge and see if like, okay, well, is this bias right or is it wrong? And like like I said, we pretty much got to be our own scientists, our own test subject, and we got to figure things out and everything. So now you might be allergic to stuff and everything. It could quite possibly be deadly. So like what you need to do is also work with like a medical team. So like if you have any known allergies, like whether it's like the common ones are like shellfish, peanuts, and like milk, like I mentioned, you work with a team where you can find out any known allergies, so that way you have that information before you jump in, so you don't necessarily inadvertently take something that might harm you or very detrimentally and everything. So like that's another thing to take into consideration as well. So like always, I'm going to take this link and put it into the comments and everything, so people can take a look at it themselves and everything. So it pretty much brings you right to the website for the USDA, and like I said, it has like a introductory YouTube video that you can check out and everything. So it's like I said, nutrition.gov.